Hey, it's Todd Duncan. Welcome back to Celebrating Leadership. This is a series that we are doing to just help the industry learn from people that are leading. And we have a great opportunity today to spend some time with a good friend of mine, Tony Blodgett. Tony's one of the most forward-thinking mortgage professionals that I've ever had a chance to meet. He's had early career success. He has had early career challenges. Today, he leads the retail sales effort at New American Funding. And Tony, it is great to have you with us on our series Celebrating Leadership. Thanks.
Todd, thanks, my friend. It's so glad to be here, and I'm looking forward to this discussion.
That's it's good. It will be that. I know. So here's how we start. We just start with a pretty general question. How did you get in to leadership?
Wow. Well, it goes way back, and I wish I could put my finger on what it is in me that has always had this desire to just kind of, for whatever reason, move up through the organization. I started in mortgage banking at 20 years old, and I worked for a company that my father owned at the time. And it was my goal to, move up and run that company someday. Whatever it is in me that, that was just my desire. And when I, after 9 years of working there and changed to go work at Mortgage Advisory Group, and we can talk more about my experiences there. But same thing, I went there as a loan officer and just had this strong desire, to get to know everybody, to be as valuable as I can to my peers. I've always been a student of this industry, and when I can help other people, it just seems that you naturally then get kind of elevated into those leadership roles. And so my first kind of soiree into leadership was actually quite early. I was probably about 24 years old, and I was the vice president of retail lending for my dad's, small mortgage company, yet very effective. And that's kind of where it started for me, where all of a sudden I was responsible for putting on sales meetings, coaching, training, mentoring loan officers, bringing new people into the industry, and overall responsible for the growth and development of our, retail presence. So, yeah.
So I told you before we started rolling the cameras, this would be organic because we're getting a lot of feedback right now. Like there's not a lot of sales meetings going on. It seems like the sales meeting has become a lost art, if you will. And of course, you and I both grew up in that, and I grew up in sales meetings when I got into the business as a loan originator. If you think back to helping your dad out, what made a great sales meeting? This is a totally off the path question, but what makes a great sales meeting?
Well, look. And let's talk about what they're doing today too, because this is a big topic for us right now. I'm making big efforts right now to bring back that sort of a culture. And I'll tell you, the teams right now that are engaging in getting together and sharing their challenges and their successes and really having a sales meeting in our branches, which some are, some aren't. We're trying to really push an agenda. I hired Dan Keller as our, regional sales manager, who a lot of people in our industry know. And, we're really trying to bring that culture of accountability and coaching and pulling together a sales meeting. Right now, it's every 2 weeks. I'd love to see it every week. I think that it's important right now more than ever. But to answer your question more specifically, what I think is important about a sales meeting is getting up in front of a group of salespeople and being able to give them ideas and structure and examples, lead by example. I mean, I was a producing manager at that time. And so really walk them through day in the life of a successful originator looks like this. And they go, well, gosh, I don't think I can do that. Well, why not? Let's talk through what are your objections? What are your challenges to that? And let me help you understand how I've overcome that personally. I think the other thing we're missing today is, look, we're telling a bunch of loan officers who over the last couple of years, some of which have been doing this for a long time, but many of which are newer to the industry. We're like, well, hey, now the refinances are gone. You need to go get some, realtor business. Well, they've never done that before. They have no idea the scripts and the process and cadence of sales calls and all of that. So a good sales meeting is truly arming them with those techniques and showing them by example. I love to use other loan officers that are having success in the branch as a model, kind of like, like the learn from your peers, if you will, and highlight those that are doing well.
Yeah. Yeah. Solid, very solid stuff. And I agree with you, man. If there's a way to get it back to weekly, that's what I grew up on and loved it and thrived on it. And, the meetings should be educational, they should be inspirational, and they should be motivational. And if we can do that and bring that back to our sales teams, especially post pandemic, I think we're putting a big dent in the universe we serve. So that's great. So Tony, let's move into this first question. And I don't want it to sound like it's going to sound, because I think great leaders don't really take the spotlight on themselves. But as you think about your achievements so far as a leader, what's one thing that you would count as maybe your greatest achievement to this point in your leadership life?
Yeah, it's a challenging question, Todd, because you're right. I don't really want to think back and then say, where can I cast the light on Tony here? But I will tell you this: when I think back at my career and I go, what are the things that bring me the most joy and excitement as a leader that I've been able to accomplish? Honestly, it's when I've had the ability to work with an individual one-on-one, whether it be a loan officer who I've brought into this industry, or a branch manager who came to me and said, look, I want to, be a branch manager, build a branch, have some, income that's not dependent on my personal production, or even now working with regionals and divisionals about how to help them as an individual, accomplish what they're trying to do. Those are really the areas that bring me the most satisfaction. I think many of us in leadership, we are technically responsible for hundreds of people, like in my case, 900 or so loan officers and 200 branches, but at the end of the day, when you can get one-on-one with somebody and really influence their life, and that they would look back and say, I wouldn't be who I was today without the mentorship, the coaching, the support of Tony, that brings me a lot of value. And now I can't touch every single person that I oversee in that level, but man, I sure try, even today, to connect with as many individuals as possible in my journey through leadership, because I know that's where, at least for me, it's going to be the most rewarding.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting when we look at reasons why people leave companies. They leave leaders. They don't necessarily leave companies. And it's hard to say they leave leaders, because if a leader was really leading, there would be an achievement there that person would feel. But I think there's a tendency to take relationships for granted. There's a tendency to take employment for granted. And even when we look at, pouring into people, and we understand followership, people follow you for only two reasons. One, they have to, which is not the right reason. And the other is because they want to. And you speak to the point of want to. The people will follow Tony. They will follow a leader because the leader is taking time to impact the life of the follower. And if you just distill leadership down to a simple idea, it is create followership because you create value, and people would not want to not follow you because following you helps them win. That's the impact I think you're making. You see that and feel that, right?
Well, yeah. And, I think that we do things that impact the masses, but you'd never quite get the same feedback. So
Right.
It's not as rewarding because, I know that people are listening when I'm doing, a coaching call to a group, or we're putting out a training, or I'm speaking in front of an audience. I would like to think that people are taking the value away from that, but it's not until you get a one-on-one relationship with them and you get that feedback that you can really feel it, and I guess just, that's where you get the good feels, that's where it feels really good. That's where it's rewarding. You have to do the other stuff because that's our job, but it doesn't have the same emotional connection because it's a one-way conversation. And you have to get to where it's a two-way conversation, and you have to be close to the street to really feel that.
Yeah. Yeah. Good perspective. Let's go back to leaving your dad's company, going to work for Mortgage Advisory Group, and tell us the story about your development there as an LO to a leader. I think you ultimately became the president of Mortgage Advisory Group, and you had some struggles that the industry was going through. And so the question about what might be one of the greatest struggles you've had and faced it, and the impact that it had, and how did you get through it?
Well, let me start with leaving my dad's company. And without getting into details, I think this is important, Todd. A lot of the reason why I left was because of you. And you didn't know this at the time. You didn't know this at the time, but I went to my first sales mastery just 60 days after getting in the mortgage business. And it opened my eyes to what some of the top performers were doing across our industry. And so I told you, I pretty quickly moved into a leadership role at my dad's company, and I wanted to implement many of those things that I saw top performers doing, like, simple things like helping loan officers build a database or providing a marketing, support program, or, these very basic things that we now think, are just kind of the fundamental basics that every good mortgage company has to provide. We didn't do those things at my dad's company. And it was really that friction of me trying to implement that is what ultimately had me leave his organization. And I went to a company who, when I walked in the door, and Dave and Lee, they told me this company was built off the fundamentals of the Duncan group. We had a director of first impressions. From the time you walked in the door to every loan officer that worked there, it was a Duncanized organization, and it really just felt right to me. And so you probably didn't know I was going to say this, but that's the reality of what supported that transition. And it was funny because just a little quick anecdote. When I first got to Mortgage Advisory Group, they sent me to Sales Mastery that year, and they actually sent someone to kind of babysit me to make sure that no other companies recruited me, because I was just in the midst of making my transition, and I wasn't even settled in yet. They're like, let's make sure this works. Kind of a funny story, but yeah. So my time at Mortgage Advisory Group was, I went there and I pulled back. I said, I'm just going to be a loan officer. I'm just going to plug in and be a top performer. But what I did intentionally right from the get-go, and this is important for anyone who I think wants to be in leadership, is I made a point to get to know all of my peers. I would walk office to office, just like I do now as a manager. And I'd sit down and I'd talk to all the loan officers that work there. And I always was willing to help with no thought that I would get anything for it, but, be their friend, get to know them a little bit, and give them advice and share, where I can. And so when it came time for, as the company grew and they needed to promote leadership, they're like, well, this guy, everyone loves this guy, so let's give him that opportunity. And so I was pretty intentional about that. And I think it's an important thing to do. And building relationships and getting to know your peers within your company is really going to set you up for the next step if you decide that you want to go into a leadership role.
100%. And obviously it worked, and you continued growing. And I think back to the first time I remember Mag in Mass, right, at Sales Mastery, and we had all the t-shirts on, and you guys matched as a color, and you guys were going places early on. And I think it does get back to Lee and Dave and the decision they made to build that culture. But I think the big lesson here is you befriended your peers. And as a result of that, I think the same thing that happened at MAG is what happened at New American for you. That is the Tony Blodgett way. You're befriending people, and you're adding value to people. And now all of a sudden you get kind of pushed up in the organization again, like you did at Mortgage Advisory Group. But between now and then, you really had to navigate some pretty difficult times. And we would not be able to do a leadership lesson without asking, what were some of those difficult times and how did you get through them?
Yeah. Look, there was a lot of difficult times. And here's the thing, Todd, is it's very parallel to what I see happening in our industry right now today. So I think there's some folks that are going to learn the same lessons that I learned, unfortunately, as we move forward. But here's the challenge, around 2013, the market had kind of cooled off. Margins were compressed like we're seeing right now, and it was a very difficult market. And we just found ourselves in a heavily regulated industry with more and more requirements for regulation. Costs were going up, margins were going down, volume was just hard to find. And we came to the realization that we probably needed to either sell the company or merge with another company or do something to kind of shore us up, keep our family and our group together, and continue on through the environment we started to see in 2014, 15, where it's just really tough to be a small independent mortgage company. And I would say for me, the most difficult thing to do was when we decided to sell Mortgage Advisory Group in 2014. And, here you are, you have, hundreds of employees that you care dearly about, knowing that there's going to be disruption in people's lives through this transition, but we need to do everything we can to preserve as much as we can, knowing that some people aren't going to make it through the transition. Some people, are going to be displaced because when you merge a company together with another one, there's a lot of overlap. So that you're going to be sacrificing parts of your family. But at the end of the day, it's what's necessary to keep the rest of the entity together. And, that came from a lot of one-on-one conversations, a lot of video communication out to my team about what was happening, the decisions we're making, why we were making them. And look, not everyone agreed all the time, but you have to proactively communicate through that. And at the end of the day, that transition, didn't go great. But I'll tell you this, the majority of the people that work for me today at my region here at New American Funding up in the Northwest worked for me at Mortgage Advisory Group. I have the majority of my operations team has been together for over 15 years. And it was the leadership that was shown during that time. Even though ultimately I didn't stay with that new company, the family, a lot of us were able to stay together even through something like that. So there was sleepless nights. When you're having to wake up every day and keep your sales team inspired and motivated, to recruit new people to your organization because you're dependent on it, but then you're meeting with your CFO and your financial team and you're realizing just the hemorrhaging that's going on in the backside, the level of, compartmentalization that you have to put into place to be able to have those difficult boardroom conversations, but then put a smile on and go out. And because the alternative is you just roll it up and pack it up and go home, And so, man, those were some of the most difficult times of my life. I think they in part made me the leader that I am today. It's what's helping me navigate and get pushed into the role that I'm in today at this level with this company because of what I went through during that time. So what felt like an absolute nightmare while I was going through it, I feel like gave me the tools, the perspective, the conservative attitude that's going to help me help navigate New American Funding through the same sort of challenges, but a company that is in a much better financial situation than what we found ourselves in as a small little boutique mortgage company, back in 2014.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I think it just it reminds me for sure. I know it reminds everybody that's viewing this that it is the struggles that cause us to grow and achieve new levels of strength. And not that any of us wake up in the morning and go, I can't wait to get beat up today. I can't wait to go through another challenge today. But, if you have a positive kind of mindset around adversity and challenges, you can learn from some of these difficult times. And the job of a leader is to learn faster than his or her followers and do it in such a way that whenever, like you just said, if something comes up again that is similar, we've kind of been through this, we've done this, and we have the muscle to get through it. And it always feels hardest the first time, and not again that we would wish another kind of struggle like that. The industry is going through almost kind of in a weird way exactly what happened then in that transition. And so leadership is about lessons, and that's why we're doing this series. So speaking about lessons and speaking about bringing up the next generation and working as a leader, think back to your journey and even now as the executive vice president of retail at New American. What are one or two things you wish you knew earlier, and why do you wish you had known them?
Well, I think the first thing that comes to mind is that everything's going to be okay. If we just show up every day, we work hard, we do our best to make smart decisions based on the information in front of us, it's all going to work out. And the reason why I wish I learned that sooner is because I lost a lot of sleep, worrying about, you can't carry the weight of everything on your shoulders every day. All you can do is wake up every day and do your very best work and just know that if you're doing that, everything's going to be everything's going to be okay. And here's the other thing that I wish I would have learned sooner, Todd, which is that, you know, you're better off being your authentic self all the time than trying to show up and be someone that you're not, because it's what you think other people expect of you.
That is huge.
That was a big one for me, you know, and I, for whatever reason, felt like I had to act a certain way, talk a certain way, you know, do certain things in order to be respected in this industry. And maybe part of it was because I was so young when I started. You know, I didn't go to college. I mean, here I've had multiple executive roles in the mortgage banking industry with no college degree, right? I mean, you talk about the imposter syndrome creeping in and whatnot. And so you decide that, you know what, maybe I don't deserve to be here. So therefore I need to change the way that I act to fit that mold. And I don't feel that way at all today. You know, I can look back. I've spent my time. I've read more books about this industry. I went and got my CMB. I did the things that I knew would position me to be able to navigate this as good as anybody with any degree. And now I just get to show up and be myself. But man, I wish I learned that years ago. Again, it's like taking a weight off of your shoulders that we don't need to bear.
Yeah. Really, it's really powerful. And I think that, you know, one of the trends we see, obviously, with technology and all that comes along with that, is the still real deep need for humanity and for connection, and to be authentic and to feel that it is safe to be your authentic self is one of the most freeing cultural igniters that there is in a business. You know, if the idea of having to pose and the idea of trying to be something you're not, it is so heavy and it's not sustainable. Plus, at the end of the day, from a perspective like yours as a leader, if you don't have an authentic culture, you don't have an authentic experience or a company. And people need to feel safe, and they need to feel it is okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to not have to have all the answers. It's okay to just for a moment say, you know what? I don't have that. I don't have that. And gosh, we could go off on this whole thing for a question, because I think a lot of leaders haven't yet learned the lesson that they should shelve their ego and put it aside, because it really doesn't matter. And to really lead with authenticity and heart and the things that cause emotional connection. I mean, that's why people love being part of culture, because they feel that their voice is heard, and they feel safe, and they don't feel shame or blame. And those are all great leadership lessons, but they rise and fall on authenticity. It sounds like you've learned that in spades, and I love that lesson. Woo!
Well, the last thing I'd say on that, Todd, is I think it makes you approachable when people just know that you're just a regular person.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember when I first went to Sales Mastery, I see Todd's, you know, like this icon up on stage, and I got to know you, and then you're like a person, and I can like text you, and we can have a phone conversation. We can agree, we can disagree, we can whatever. And until you can get to that level with your people where they feel like they can have just like a real conversation like they would have with the loan officer in the office next door to them, you're not going to hear the stories. You're not going to hear the real frustrations that your team has until they feel like they can talk to you like you're one of them. And that is a very difficult thing to do for many leaders. It's been difficult for me over the years, because look, the reality is you get pushed into these high level meetings and you're always busy and you're doing these things. And not only do you not have the time, or you don't dedicate the time necessary to make those connections, people don't think that you have the time. Even if you want to make the connection, they think that you don't, because of the persona you put off. So you are constantly fighting that to say, look, just text me, just call me. Like I'm approachable. I'm just another person just like you. I was a loan officer not that long ago. Let's talk about your fears and concerns. And so I think by being authentic and being real with people, it makes you approachable. And when you're approachable, then you can start to hear what's really going on in your organization and address it. Because if they don't think you're approachable, you're never going to hear about it. And that's
it's over. Hey, man, what a great 25-minute conversation. I'm so proud of you, and I'm so grateful that our friendship is where it's at, and we can have a convo like this. And hundreds and thousands of leaders that are going to be able to get to listen to this. It's a remarkable experience to see where you started, where you are, and I'm absolutely confident it's going to be remarkable to watch where you go. So thanks for giving us your time, and thanks for helping leaders learn how to lead at a higher level. It's been a blast, Tony. I appreciate it.
I appreciate being a part of the conversation, and I'm looking forward to seeing you later this year.
That's going to be a lot of fun. All right. Take care. We'll be back with everybody on another edition of Celebrating Leadership.